WJLX is streaming live and worldwide at WJLX1015.com. You can also take us anywhere you go with the WJLX app for your smartphone, available now in the App Store and on Google Play. Simply search WJLX 101.5 and download it today. Live, local, in the community, and now worldwide. We are Jasper's WJLX 101.5. This is the B&B Show on WJLX 1015, your midweek go-to for local sports, entertainment, and the best of the 90s. The B&B Show with Brian and Baz starts now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and live from Jasper, it is Wednesday night, and that means it is time for your weekly visit with the B&B Show here on the flagship of WJLX 101.5. My name's Brian, and now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, WJLX proudly brings to you the Pharaoh of Phoenix and the Colossus of Cordova. He is so quick, he's even fast asleep. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen.
Baz, also known as Sebastian Black. Brian, first Wednesday of November, and it couldn't be a better one. I know you've had a busy day for sure, and I believe you've had a busy week, and I believe you had a busy Halloween as well.
Yeah, I didn't have to dress up. I've already, me and my wife went as Beauty and the Beast, and I didn't really have to dress up. So.
There you go.
That's the good news. But yeah, we've been tearing up the roads today, handing out awards and doing preview shows. We'll touch on that in the second part of the hour because I think a lot of the folks out there are going to love it.
Oh, yeah.
But you know something, Bass? What's really cool? Our special guest is already here from this week.
He is.
Live from coming to us from over in Clem Gym. And now in the studio with us is head coach of the Bevill State basketball Bears, Coach Kelly Cheatham, who is entering his third season at the head of the Bears program. Coach, thank you for joining us. A pleasure to have you on.
Good to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Now, Coach, obviously there's a brand new season started, a lot of excitement going on. We do have some 3 local players that are still with us. Dylan Hendricks spent a lot of time out with injury. He is, of course, a Cordova Blue Devil. He's out there with us, along with one of the newer faces, Zach Lawhorn, who is a Carbon Hill Bulldog. And then a very special young man from Oakman. I'm just going to let you, because we're expecting some great things on him, I'm going to let you talk about our Oakman Wildcat there for just a moment.
Yeah, Skylar Heiss, this will be his third year with us. He's a seasoned veteran with us, and hopefully we can count on him for some leadership and some experience for a group of newcomers that we have. A lot of new faces this year, and be good to have Skylar and a couple of the guys that we've had that'll show them the way, so to speak.
Maurice Johnson, of course, another one of those returners, and we had talked. Me and Bass saw so many great plays by Maurice last year. He really gets up in the court, and I know you'll be leaning on his experience very well.
Yeah, Maurice is a really good defender. He shared the point guard spot with C.J. Beckham last season. So, that experience is really valuable for the new guys that we got coming in. And we'll definitely look to him for leadership. And glad to have him back also.
The newcomers, and there is a lot of them, as you mentioned, will be filling a lot of roles. What can you tell us about some of the incoming freshmen or some of the newcomers?
Well, we got a lightning quick point guard coming in, play with Next Level Prep School. So he's played at the college level because they play some colleges, some junior colleges. Donovan Shangace will be a guy that we feel like will come in and impact the team immediately. We got a group of guys we call bigs, Alistair Dixon, couple of other guys that we feel like will be helping us in the post area, losing some of our guys from the post, and we look forward to them stepping in and getting some quick experience early and helping us on down the season.
As we take a look at the season, you guys have already played some scrimmages, played in a few side games, so to speak, before the season officially starts a week from today. How's that gone for us?
It's been pretty good. We got good experience. Again, like when you have a lot of new guys, you like for them to get experience, and so those scrimmage games against other junior colleges really kind of let you know what you got, where you need to work on what you need to work on, and who's going to step up and help you. So in that respect, it was valuable for us to get those scrimmage games in early.
Next Wednesday night, of course, we want to officially promo all the activities. First and foremost, we do have a tip-off to officially start the season at Clem Gymnasium against the Stillman JV. We're actually going to start off with a party, kind of a tailgate party, if you will, right around 4 o'clock, and there's going to be a pep rally at 5. And then there's the matchup with Stillman, which we've seen them quite a few times over the years. That'll transition into a couple of games, one at home and one on the road with Itawamba, as we begin to get into the month of November. Talk a little bit about this time before Christmas, to where you're kind of getting the chance to fill out and before the conference play.
Yeah, we won't have a conference game until later on. We've got about 4 or 5 games, regular season games, but non-conference games that we got coming up November, December that we can look at and hopefully we can get some momentum going into those conference games from these non-conference games and get some guys prepared to get into the thick of conference play when we get back in.
And of course, inside the conference, just a power-packed group that we've seen year in and year out. Shelton's always up there. Really great program. Wallace has really come on in the past couple of years. We've seen movement by Lawson. They climbed up. I think we've got a brand new college. I think it's Calhoun that started up back their program again. So there's always a challenge in once conference play, night in and night out.
Absolutely. And that's what we're trying to get the guys prepared for. They don't really understand how tough it is night in and night out in the conference. And, they say junior college, but these are college level basketball players, and they can really play. And you have to be prepared every night if you're going to get some wins.
Well, Coach, we're going to take our first music break. Bass, this is Spend My Life by Slaughter, one of your picks.
Sure was. Slaughter, really good 90s band here, and figured I'd bring them up tonight on the show. So here's Spend My Life by Slaughter. That was Slaughter and Spend My Life right here on the B&B Show. Back here with the man who runs the show there, Bevill State head basketball coach Kelly Cheatham here. Brian, what else we got for the coach?
Well, Coach, we were just talking off the air here about some of the bigs. Heard you got a new transfer in, and you're also excited about some more of your bigs. So talk about those big guys that'll be working the middle for you.
Yeah, Camarius Coles is a 6'8" post guy. He's transferred to us from Mississippi Delta, so he's got some experience. Jamias Davis, he's a 6'5" post. He's not as tall and doesn't play above the rim, but he uses his body well in the post. And in the scrimmage games, he actually kind of was one of the guys that kind of led us offensively. So those two guys will definitely help us. And then we got a powerhouse guy, Jason Griffith. He'll be a true freshman. Plays really, really hard. He's about 6'5", so not the 6'7", 6'8", but they'll make up the size with how hard they play, I think.
Excellent. Hopefully, we'll get to see some of my favorite plays, the shot blocks. Hopefully, we'll see some of them throwing those arms up. So, Coach, here's we are in the back end of the show. We'll kind of lay it back. Now, of course, you had a long, storied, successful history in the prep ranks. So talk about some of the stops that you made for those who didn't see some of the articles that we did in the Walker magazine at the Daily Mountain Eagle. Talk about some of your stops that you've had throughout the years around the state.
Yeah, well, most of the success was at Ramsey High School. I was at Huffman High School for 5 years and coached both basketball and assistant football, head basketball. But when we got to Ramsey, we had a lot of success. We were able to win 2 state championships there. We spent a lot of time at the Civic Center in the Final Four. I think we made it 4 times, didn't get it, but we total of 6, and we got 2 state championships. So those were really good years at Ramsey. We had some good players and a good coaching staff, and we put it all together and had a lot of success there.
Well, obviously, with basketball now, a lot of your time in the off season spent pursuing the next crop of Bears. But when you have free time, what do you like to fill up your free time with?
I got a grandbaby.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's the first one, and she's pretty special, precious. So that pretty much fills it.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, yeah. She stays with us a lot, so she takes up a lot of my free time now.
Now, how acquainted are you with like Disney and the Nickelodeon and those sort?
I think I can quote some of the songs. I can sing some of the songs. And she's almost 2, but she'll probably be heading to Disney World over the break when we have our break from school.
I know, I know some people that are going to Disney, as well. So I know how that is, Coach. I'm sure you're going to love this. It's so different at different ages, but when you get to watch them that they see on TV, the characters that they see on the TV, when you get to see them interact with the characters, get to play with a Minnie, a Mickey, a Doc McStuffins, whoever, any of the princesses. Yeah. I know you and your wife, that's going to be something that you always remember.
Oh, yeah. We're looking forward to it. We definitely are. She went to we took her to Disney on Ice last week, so we're getting ready for Disney World.
Wow. It's going to be a special time, Coach. I know you guys are going to absolutely love it. Do you have a chance to take a look at the NBA and college basketball?
Yeah, absolutely. I prefer watching the college level. I watch some NBA, especially the NBA when it gets to the playoffs. They really play hard at that time, play defense at that time. but college is more, closer to what we're doing. So I look at a lot of college basketball. I actually go to college practices in Birmingham, UAB, and Miles has a really good program, and Sanford. I talk with their coaches about some of the things that they're doing and try to pick up some points that'll help our program.
Miles is a beautiful college. I went down there a couple of weeks ago. It was for football for 3 of our area guys, but it was the first time I had a visit, and I just looked at it. It's just a gorgeous college. I mean, it really is. Yeah,
they've added some dorms and some other buildings and tearing some older buildings down. They're really coming up at Miles.
College basketball around the state, especially in the major programs, has evolved so much. 7 years ago, before Nate Oates and Bruce Pearl were around here, it was kind of, they were basically almost middle of the pack, but maybe about it. And now Coach Pearl has done such an outstanding job. Coach Oates has built up the program very well that they're being talked about. It's really evolved, hasn't it?
Absolutely, I think so too. And that those guys recruit, and it's really about, you get some good players with good coach, and if the players work hard, the talented players work hard, then you got something, and they've been able to put it all together. Coach Pearl and Coach Oates definitely have been able to do that since they've been at the helm.
Coach, as we get ready to wrap up, once again, next Wednesday will be a big day for us all. You guys are doing the official opening of the season with Stillman, the tailgate party right around 4 o'clock, pepper rally at 5, and then the game as they enter on, and then it just we take off from there with the broadcast. So I know we all are excited, and I know you guys have to be very excited as well.
Absolutely, we are. The guys, I was talking to them today about, trying to stay focused, and it's coach's job to keep them focused. You got some stuff going on outside of the game. You have to try to keep them focused on what we got to do when the game starts. So, and then it's a long season, so I try to get them not to get too excited at the beginning, because you got a long season, and so save some of that excitement so it can expand all the way through the season. But yeah, we're looking forward to it, and it's good for them to have the publicity and the people coming out and watching and cheering them on.
We want to also officially announce, now we will not have a B&B show next week because we will be broadcasting the game with Stillman. But after next week, once we resume our normal schedule, we're going to have a Bears player in the studio with us each week. Coach, who's a good, funny, social talker that we need to look for that'll really light up the show?
I think you will like Chance Beavers and Alistair Dixon. They're the guys that I think will, get you going, get you laughing, and have some interesting stuff to say.
I cannot wait to have those two on. I think we're going to have a good time with that.
For sure there.
But once again, everybody, remember, next Wednesday, the tailgate party starts up at 4 p.m. as we get prepared, and then the pepper rally at 5. And then remember, the game with the Stillman JV tips it all off at 6 p.m. 6 p.m., that's correct, Coach? Yep. At 6 p.m., and we'll be broadcasting it live just in case you can't get out there. Looking forward to it. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you and your guys on the broadcast starting next Wednesday night.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Coach.
Basso, we are up to our next music, and this time a commercial break. Up all night. I hope I'm not up all night because it was an early morning for me.
I understand. Hey, what time did you get up this morning?
I got up at 8:30, and that's pretty tough when you've on.
I was up at 7:30, so I had to come here and do the church show on every weekday, every day.
Bass, it's tough when you're falling asleep at 4 to wake up at
Hey,
8:30.
that's true. That's true. But nonetheless, here is Up All Night Slaughter right here on the B&B Show.
Coach we follow.
All right, blow the horn. Let's go.
The famous call we love to hear.
Touchdown, Alabama!
It's good to be a Bama fan. Join us Saturday as the Crimson Tide brave Death Valley to battle the LSU Tigers. Our coverage begins at 3 on your home for Alabama football. The Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Brian, that's right. Bama is back this weekend, Saturday, as they head to Baton Rouge to take on them. I'd like to call them right now the feisty LSU Tigers, because man, they're starting to get things rolling over there in Baton Rouge there and at Tiger Stadium. So, and you can always listen to Alabama football all season long right here on WJLX as pregame at 3 o'clock. Airtime, 6 o'clock kickoff right here on WJLX. And Brian, want to talk about another former Tigers as some news broke out this week. The head coach, what was the head football coach for the Auburn Tigers, Coach Brian Harsin, has been fired.
Mm-hmm. Bass, I'm thinking to myself that we probably want to take a look at their game coming up this Saturday, but we're going to have the round table on at 7:30, and I want to get everybody's perspective on this because this is a very tumultuous time on the Plains.
Yeah.
And I think it deserves its own segment because the program really, outside of the athletic director, it's in a state of tumult.
Yeah.
Of course, Cadillac Williams, the all-time great, one of the all-time greats at Auburn, has been appointed as interim head coach. He doesn't have any head coaching experience that I'm aware of, at least not at the collegiate, the major collegiate level. So that's very interesting. So I'm going to see what all four of us think, add in the opinions on the state of the Auburn program when the round table assembles at 7:30. But, Auburn has a game with a very capable Mississippi State team who we last saw. I think they had an off week. No, they played A&M last week. They're a team that's very capable. And it's going to be really interesting to see on the field what exactly that we see from the Auburn Tigers. Do they come out inspired? Or are they just go into the motions of saying, okay, well, let's just get out of this season as quickly as possible, which they could, of course, do until the Iron Bowl. Then every single Auburn player is going to be up no matter what they've done in between here to there. But Mississippi State rebounded from that loss to Bama, and they took out Texas A&M. And so State is coming in looking to continue that momentum.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, what we could see from Auburn coming out now will be very interesting to see. Now, the one good thing for Auburn is normally when Auburn is at home, they have the more advantage. But I think the Auburn players are happy to get away from all of this and take to the road.
Yeah.
So that's a special advantage that Auburn could have is they don't have to deal with all that. They're on the road. They've got their own little cadre that can take care of them inside the team. Things are just kind of hands off.
Yeah.
So that'll be a very interesting game. As you mentioned, at 6 p.m., LSU's moved up to number 10 in the country, and it's worth it.
Oh, yeah.
They started off the season, which that team that we saw against FSU is like comparing what we saw from Dora against Winfield to now. They had a small loss to Tennessee, which we're finding out is worth a lot. And they're coming in, and it's always been said that Death Valley is one of the toughest places in college football to play. Now you've got Bama that's looking for their resurgence of life. Really whacked Mississippi State before the off week, 30-6. Actually, could have easily been 30-0. Mississippi State scored on the last play of the game. But Bama obviously looking to keep their momentum going. LSU, who's already defined expectations, needs this game, but they don't need it as much as Bama.
Mm-hmm.
Because Bama loses now. They could kiss their national championship goodbye.
I saw a thing the other day. Bama's got to win out the next 2 games to pretty much clinch the SEC championship game.
Yeah. So you lose any time from here on out, with the exception of Austin Peay, and I don't see them losing to an FCS Austin Peay team. But you lose now, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
It's done for the SEC championship. It's done for the national title. It's done. So I think, to me, Bama needs this game more than LSU does.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And LSU's going to play tough, too.
yeah,
LSU
they are.
always plays tough at home.
Kicking off the day at 11 a.m. is Kentucky, Missouri. Kentucky looked like a rag doll last week against Tennessee. Missouri did a good job with the upset over South Carolina. So these are 2 teams that both want to win. Kentucky to regain some momentum. Missouri's sitting at 4-4. They don't want to go 4-5, because then there's a possibility that, look, you're struggling to try to make a bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not a game that needs to be taken lightly for either one of these teams. They both need to win.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be interesting. In a game that I could really particularly care less, the garbage has to go to Texas A&M, who's 3-5 right now, Bass. Boy, has the wheels come off the bus at A&M.
Yeah, it really has.
I mean, you're having to think that the disgruntledness has shifted in the SEC from Auburn to Texas A&M. You had a number 1 class in the nation. That's what you signed.
Mm-hmm.
And you're 3-5 right now?
I've already seen a thing. I can't remember what website it was. It was a credible source. Was there's already possibly talks of A&M buying out Jimbo's contract.
There's a good possibility of it.
Mm-hmm.
Real good possibility of it. Especially, this situation is different from Auburn, because whoever the coach is that comes in next is going to have a storehouse of talent.
Yeah.
I mean, to work with. I mean, ideally, look, resources, in-state recruiting availability, and already the storehouse of talent. I mean, this is what you really want to jump on.
Mm-hmm.
If they lose this game to garbage, I will have to pull for A&M, because they're not ISIS, North Korea, Syria, Russia, or any of those hooligan nations. I'm going to have to pull for A&M. But if A&M loses this and they go to 3-6, Bass, the best they are going to do on the year is a cut dry 6-6.
Mm-hmm.
That is not going to go over with those boosters
No.
at A&M.
No.
So I will pull for Texas A&M, but if they lose, things are going to get very interesting over there in College Station.
Yeah.
At 2:30, let's basically call it. It's the SEC Eastern Division Championship game.
This, yeah, for sure, this is the biggest game of the year, I believe, within the SEC. And, of course, I mean, you got the SEC championship, but this right here really, really sets it.
Now, let's go ahead and look at one thing, Bass. The victory over Bama. That was it in Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
The victory over Georgia. That was in Knoxville. The victory over the garbage. That was in Knoxville. This game is in Athens. A lot different atmosphere. Tennessee's not used to hearing crowd noise this year. Not when their offense is on the field.
Yeah.
Makes for some interesting storylines in this. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think you're right on that, and I do think this is an interesting matchup, to say the least. What I do find interesting is before the, I guess you say, before they re-announced the rankings there, pretty much the playoff rankings, I guess you could call it. Georgia was favored by 12 points. Now they're favored by 8 points, and it's like it keeps going down. It is being played in Athens, though. That's what makes it interesting to me is, it's not a home game for Tennessee. But also, too, I mean, we've talked about Georgia before so far on the season. Georgia's kind of playing to their style in a way. Me personally, Brian, it's being played in Athens, but I don't really see Georgia coming away with this one.
You don't.
But also, too, we've talked about it. We talked about it with Kentucky last week or the week before, which Kentucky didn't do much of anything. But if you can stop their main wide receiver that they pass to, Georgia will have a chance. I know Georgia's capable of doing that. But just you've got to really, really stop that main wide receiver.
On top of that, outside of stopping him, there's one other thing, and we know how good of a defensive mind that Kirby Smart is. A lot of blitzes may not give Hendon Hooker a whole lot of time.
Yep.
So that's going to be something to watch. Bass and I will get to the second half of the slate of games right after we take another music break, which is Fly to the Angels.
Fly to the Angels. Slaughter another really, really good 90s hit for the band. Here is Fly to the Angels. Angel Slaughter right here on the B&B Show, back here talking SEC football for this weekend. Brian, what's the second half of the slate we got on games?
Well, the 3 p.m. game, Liberty, who's 7-1 on the season, travels to Fayetteville to take on the Arkansas Razorbacks. And, of course, Liberty, as many well know, is currently the coaching home of Hugh Freeze, who is a big talked-up candidate for that Auburn job. Now, he has just signed an 8-year extension, but you're talking Liberty money versus what could be Auburn money.
Yeah.
But stepping away from that for just a moment, Bass, I look at this Liberty team and I'm just wondering to myself, okay, you are 7-1, granted. You're an independent. But what exactly have you done? That's my question. They've beaten Wake Forest, which was a halfway decent win. They won by a point.
They actually lost to Wake Forest.
They did lose to Wake Forest. My bad. So, okay, so they've lost to Wake Forest. They beat BYU, which is not very a good team.
Mm-mm.
And then, Bass, you look at the rest of their schedule. Southern Miss, UAB, those are Conference USA teams. Akron, Old Dominion, UMass, that's All-American, some MAC teams, you know, basically lower tier conference stuff. Gardner Webb is, I think, an FCS school. So here's my question to Liberty. What exactly have you done that's really that worthy? Because I'm not really seeing anything, and it's certainly not the caliber of an SEC team like Arkansas.
Yeah. Liberty has not done anything at all, really. And even talking about the Gardner Webb team, who's an FCS school, they only won by 1 point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they lost to 1 point, to Wake Forest. Could have been, I guess you could say, pretty big for them, but they haven't done anything. What's interesting to me is they come into this game against Arkansas, 13. Arkansas is favored by 13.5 points, which is kind of interesting, to say the least, against the Liberty team.
Yeah, and that to me is really enterprising because, as I mentioned, I don't really see what Liberty has done significantly well outside of beating an independent team in BYU, who's they're 4-5.
Yep.
I just don't see it. So I don't think that Arkansas is not really in any danger of losing this game. I don't see them blowing out Liberty. Hugh Freeze is a really good coach. We saw that during his time at Ole Miss, and he's already gotten Liberty up and running. So I don't see that Arkansas is in any danger of losing this game. But at the same time, Bass, I don't see how Liberty wins this.
Yeah, that just the level of talent that Liberty's played is not that good.
Yeah.
So yeah, not really sure on how they can possibly win this game. But I mean, we've seen crazy things happen this season so far, but you never know. But I don't see it.
We briefly talked or we did talk about the Auburn-Mississippi State game, which will be the 6:30 game, and, of course, the Bama game, which is at 6. We both covered them a lot more. The final game of the day, South Carolina, who's 5-3, takes on Vandy, who is 3-5. Vandy, they looked really good against Missouri. Ended up being a 17-14 game. South Carolina, who we thought may have been one of the hot teams, got exposed by Missouri last week. This is a game that South Carolina could win. But South Carolina has gone through another of those flip-flops that we saw at the beginning of the season. Now they're flip-flopping the other way again. On paper, South Carolina should wipe out Vandy. But which South Carolina's team is going to show up is the question.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about when I just saw that the spread here is got South Carolina favored by a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you're right. You really don't know what South Carolina team's really going to show up.
Yeah.
I don't really know what else to say on that, to be honest, because it's just the Vanderbilt, who had a really good game against Missouri. Well, Missouri just beat South Carolina.
Is this the South Carolina team that beat Kentucky, weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it the same South Carolina team that lost to Missouri, lost to Arkansas? I'm going to say lost to Georgia because that was kind of a game that we expected the outcome of that. But which South Carolina team are we going to get? Because if they're coming in playing a really bad game, Vandy's certainly not the most talented team in the SEC. As a matter of fact, in terms of talent, they're the worst in the SEC. But they've got enough talent where if South Carolina comes in there playing flubby, they can knock them off.
Mm-hmm. Definitely going to be interesting to see what can happen there.
But, well, that's going to wrap up SEC play for this week. And when we have the round table in here, Bass, I, the coach, and Luke are going to really take a look at what's going on down there in the plains.
Mm-hmm.
But for right now, we're going to head to another music break where Bass has another great pick by Slaughter, The Wildlife. We'll have a commercial break, and then Bass will be front and center for the biggest on the track of the year because it's championship time.
It's kind of ironic that the selection, The Wildlife by Slaughter, got put right at on the track hour pretty much because when I talk about a real wild situation there in Martinsville back this past weekend on Sunday, we're going to take a deep dive into that because it was interesting. But nonetheless, The Wildlife, Slaughter, come back, have On the Track on the B&B Show.
America's best warranty and Honda voted most trusted automotive brand can be found at Honda and Hyundai of Jasper. Take the short drive to big savings on two of the top-selling automotive brands conveniently located side by side in Jasper. Find great selection, low pressure, low pricing, in a buying experience that can't be beat. Deal directly with the decision makers at Honda and Hyundai of Jasper, where you have the opportunity to compare two great brands side by side. Visit us at HondaofJasper.com or HyundaiofJasper.com and then make the short ride to big savings.
When choosing a hospice provider, things like compassion, respect, and professionalism are of great importance. At Southeast Hospice, we put your loved one's dignity and comfort above all else. When faced with hospice care, we hope you will reach out to us and let us be there for your family. Southeast Hospice is Walker County's only locally owned and operated hospice provider. Let us care for your loved one by providing peace when it matters most. Southeast Hospice. Telephone 387-2300.
This is Chris Stewart of the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Listen to Alabama football all season long right here. Now, more of the B&B Show on WJLX.
Welcome back, everybody, and thank you so much for Chris Stewart for our intro. Now,
Gotta love the good old Chris Stewart, but I really like to when he gets back to having the Eli Gold one too. That'd be really cool.
oh yeah, that'd be wonderful.
That'd be awesome.
Bass, you now take center stage. It is the biggest week for NASCAR this week. Pharaoh of Phoenix, start your engines.
It is. It is finally championship week, and we're going to go over it here. But first, we're going to talk about last week here, and let's see here if the computer will work with me here. Last week, Martinsville Speedway was the action for the Xfinity and Cup Series. Saturday, we kick it off with Xfinity Series action. And for some reason, internet seems to be acting up. Nonetheless, though, your winner of the Xfinity race on Saturday was Ty Gibbs. He wins the Xfinity Series race at Martinsville. And something very interesting, Brian. Came down to the final lap, and he took out his teammate to make it to the championship four. He dumped his teammate in first corner. That was interesting to see nonetheless, but Ty Gibbs has won the Xfinity Series race at Martinsville. Championship 4 is set. And it's very interesting. It's Ty Gibbs, the lone Toyota, with 3 Chevrolets, who 3 of them out of the 4 are teammates at Junior Motorsports: Justin Allgaier, Josh Berry, and Noah Gregson. What's even more interesting, Brian, is Ty Gibbs' teammate, Brandon Jones, who he dumped on Saturday for the win, is heading to Junior Motorsports next year. Could Junior Motorsports have a helping hand in a Toyota affiliate there come this Saturday for the championship? Because man, that's kind of interesting.
I've never understood why you have teams anyway in racing. I mean, each individual person's out for themselves, right? They want to win it.
Pretty much, yeah.
So I never understood that. But please carry on.
Truck Series, their championship 4 was already set. We'll go over it again. Last race, Homestead Miami Speedway 2 weeks ago. Ty Majeski was your winner, and Ty Majeski, Ben Rhodes, Chandler Smith, and Zane Smith are your championship 4. That championship race will be taking place Friday night there at Phoenix Raceway in Arizona. And the Cup Series, and boy, it was a hot one, Brian. And I mean a hot one. Here's something interesting. And your race winner for this past Sunday, Martinsville Speedway, was Christopher Bell. And talk about clutch situations Christopher Bell has been in. Came down to the round of 12, making it to the round of 8. And he clutched up a win at Charlotte Roval to advance him into the next round. He needed a win to advance. He got it. Well, Brian, he needed the same thing to make it to Championship 4. He needed a win, and he did that. He got him a win. So the title field is set. Christopher Bell, Chase Elliott, Joe Logano, and the fourth spot it came down to, Brian.
Wow.
Here it is. The picture right here. I don't know, did you get to even see what happened there?
Yeah.
Let's just say this. Came down to Denny Hamlin, driver of the number 11, and Ross Chastain, driver of the number 1. Ross Chastain needed 2 positions, needed to pass 2 cars in order to advance to the championship 4. What Ross Chastain does, his team tells him he needs 2 more spots as he just gets out. He's on the final lap. He needs 2 spots to advance. Going into turn 3, he hits 5th gear. Nobody on Sunday hit 5th gear except for him. He hits 5th gear and does the most video game move ever. Full throttle. Nails the turn 3 and 4 wall and just riding the wall. And picks up 5 spots. Beating Denny Hamlin out to make it into the championship 4. Talk about a balls to the wall move. Nobody's ever seen it happen until Sunday. So Ross Chastain has won his way off of that move. Was number 1 on ESPN. They talked about it for a while. Has now clinched himself into the championship 4, and it comes down to Sunday to see who wins it. Talk about the craziest move of them all. Nonetheless, though, this week in Phoenix, and Tyler Reddick also had in Cup Series on Sunday, had an early exit at Martinsville. He had a pretty hard hit and thought maybe he had a concussion. He has been cleared. He's been given the go to race this weekend, final race for the Cup Series. Chase Elliott is the favorite to win the Cup Series championship on Sunday. And let's see, I don't think they've got any. No, they don't. They don't have any odds here for the Xfinity and Truck Championship. But also, too, big news were coming out yesterday, Brian. You remember how, you may not, but Dale Earnhardt and the good old the Bass Pro Shops car, they sponsored Dale Earnhardt for a couple, long time ago. Mm-hmm. Well, Bass Pro Shops is continuing to stay with Junior Motorsports, sponsoring Carson Quapple and the late models for his team, Junior Motorsports, sponsoring Josh Berry in a late model race at the end at Thanksgiving weekend, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. next year in the Xfinity Series race and the late model race, throwback race coming up, I believe soon. That's huge. Bass Pro Shops sticking with a team, and man, they're beautiful race cars, I'll tell you that much. Nonetheless, though, also, too, just something that broke out is being reported now. It's supposed to be announced sometime this week within the remaining days. 7-time Cup Series champion Jimmy Johnson, everybody knows him, is finalizing a deal to obtain an ownership stake with the Petty GMS organization starting in 2023. And Petty GMS Motorsports has told The Athletic Johnson will also drive in select races for the team next year. An announcement is expected this week. So that is huge news that is being reported now and should be breaking out within the next couple of days, because obviously it's supposed to be announced this week. So that's going to be huge.
Yeah, it is.
That's huge there. Nonetheless, Brian, on the track is finalized as this is it. That this is the championship week. We don't have a B&B show next week. I'll give a small detail on who won the championships next week at the Bevill game next Wednesday night. But this is it. This is the final on the track segment of the year.
Well, it is almost time then to file it away.
Mm-hmm.
If you miss any of it and don't hear anything about it all week, next week, then be sure to check us out during the Bevill game, because at halftime, Bass will run down what happened.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For
But
sure.
Bass-
But, Brian, I appreciate you always giving me the opportunity to do this on the track segment. I enjoy it. You know, it's fun. Can't believe the season's over pretty much. This weekend's it.
Yep. It is slowly toddled away here, and it is ready to be settled on Saturday. Bass, let's take us another commercial break, and then we crowned a couple of players of the week this week, and we will go over them and our notable performances from week 11 right after Days Gone By.
Days Gone By. Slaughter, another great 90s hit from the band. Here is Days Gone By. Back on the B&B Show, days gone by slaughter here on the B&B Show. And Brian, I believe you went and crowned some players of the week actually today.
That is correct, sir. First and foremost, our player of the week for the Jasper Vikings was Mekhi Pledger. He ran for over 100 yards in the game against Homewood, scored himself a couple of touchdowns, and has proven to be quite a growing halfback. Just a freshman. Just a freshman. He's going to be around for the Vikings for a long time. Had a chance to go out to talk to Mekhi Pledger today, and here's what he had to say. Into the Southeast Hospice WJLX Player of the Week for Jasper, and this week it's Mekhi Pledger, running back, who had over 100 yards, a couple of touchdowns against Homewood the other night. Mekhi, congratulations.
Thank you.
I know you wanted the outcome to be different, but at the same time, being able to get 100 yards off the help of the offensive line in front of you, opening the holes against a quality Region 6A opponent is something that I know you got to be proud of.
Yes, sir. I really am.
Well, obviously, as the season has progressed, you and the offensive line have kind of grown together where they're opening those good holes for you every single week, and you're picking up more yards. What's it been like for you to see your own growth and to see those guys in front of you growing?
It's really good. It's just we got a connection. Everybody on the field, I got a connection with everybody on the field. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Well, congratulations once again on being named our Player of the Week, and we look forward to seeing how you guys do against me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mekhi Pledger of the Jasper Vikings, this week's Southeast Hospice Jasper Player of the Week. And Brian, I believe you had another Wallwin player.
Yeah, our first time to crown a Summoning Christian Player of the Week for the Wallwin area, and it was Canaan DeFore. Now, Canaan had not only a great showing on offense, he took care of it on defense. Baskey scored 3 touchdowns on offense, and he had 3 interceptions on defense. I would say that was a pretty balanced performance in that win over Berry. Had a chance to talk to the senior as he laments on his final game, football-wise, for the Eagles, and here's what Mr. DeFore had to say. Hey everybody, to the Southeast Hospice WJLX Player of the Week here for the Wallwin area, and we're at Summoning Christian, where it's Canaan DeFore, who is our Player of the Week. Now, he had a great outing against Berry the other night. He scored 3 touchdowns, and on the defensive side, also recorded 3 interceptions. So congratulations, Canaan.
Thanks.
I know it's got to be such a spectacular thing to get the work done on offense and on defense. So you had a total overall effort. Just talk about what it was like at the end of the night after kind of looking back.
Well, going into the game, I mean, sophomore year, Barry, they put us out of the playoffs first round. So we kind of had that little chip on our shoulder. Like everybody on the team, we all wanted to win that game. So to go out 5-5 felt pretty good, especially to Barry.
Yeah, and on the lines of that, I know this year coming in was particularly rough because of the amount of guys that you all lost last year. A lot of leadership component, and you would have a lot of young guys in this year. And through all the trials and the tribulations, you were able to finish 5-5. I know obviously you'd rather be in the playoffs, but at the same time, you've got to feel happy at least being able to end the year cut and dry with 5-5.
Oh yeah, I mean, it felt good to end at 5-5, having an even record. Losing all the guys, it was rough, but we put in the work during the summer, preseason, everything. Everybody put in work day in and day out, working out every day in the locker room, and so it felt good to go out even.
Well, Canaan, congratulations on winning the Player of the Week, and also being able to round out the career with a good win over Berry. We look forward to seeing you at the end of the year banquet. Thanks.
That was Kanan DeFore of the Summoning Christian Eagles. There, your Wallwin Player of the Week. And Brian, I believe we had some more notables here for Players of the Week.
We did, Bass. Starting off first with Addison. Briley Hayes had 4 total touchdowns, 2 total passing and 2 rushing. For Carbon Hill, Walker Kimbrell, 16 of 31 passing for 255 yards with 3 touchdowns. Cam DeJesus had 12 catches for 255 yards with 3 touchdowns and also had 30 yards passing. J.P. Burkett and Blake Engel both had 11 tackles on defense. For Cordova, Cody Hedrick was 13 of 17 passing for 207 yards with 3 touchdowns. He also carried 9 times for 64 yards with 2 touchdowns. That was 271 total yards with 5 touchdowns. Bass, hats off to Cody Hedrick. I know we'll get to see him at the banquet, but just a stellar career for a great quarterback for him, and another senior majorly contributed. I know Coach was happy to say this. Jalen Armistead with 9 catches for 136 yards with a touchdown. David Odom, 25 carries for 81 yards with a touchdown. For Dora, we talked to him today. Sean Pryor, 9 of 14 for 154 yards with 2 touchdowns. He also rushed 8 times for 251 yards with 2 touchdowns. A total of 405 total yards overall for the game and 4 touchdowns. Also for Jasper, Spencer Rosenfeld had 80 yards passing with also 66 yards rushing. For the Lynn Bears, Cale Tittle, 16 of 27 for 310 yards with 3 touchdowns. Cole Kelly had 25 carries for 163 yards also with 3 touchdowns. For the Meek Tigers, Cam Deaver, 23 rushes for 244 yards with 2 touchdowns. He was also 5 of 6 passing for 71 yards with a touchdown. He had 315 all-purpose yards with 3 touchdowns. For the Oakman Wildcats, Trace Cagle had a passing touchdown while Kason Dickerson and Rick Johnson rushed for a rushing touchdown each. For Winston County, Declan Morgan had a passing touchdown, and Ethan Morgan returned an interception for a touchdown. Congratulations to both of our Players of the Week and also our notables. And as I mentioned, Bass, all of our Players of the Week will be invited to our end-of-the-year banquet. We're going to be releasing the information on that as Brett and I are working to get all the dates and everything finalized. We have a lot of good plans thus far lined up. We're going to be naming 5 different categories: our Player of the Year, our Coach of the Year, our Offensive Player of the Year, our Defensive Player of the Year, and also a Making a Difference award for someone special in our area that has contributed, may not be a player, might be an assistant coach, might be another staff member, might be an influential teacher, or it could be a player. But one of them is going to be getting one of those awards. And then we also have several small awards that we're also going to mention throughout that. It'll, of course, be next month, and we'll have all the details released soon. Looking very forward to our first ever awards ceremony.
That'll be really cool.
Yes, it will be. But, Bass, we're going to take a music and commercial break, and we're going to be back assembling the round table. Why don't we go ahead, as the coach is already in here and he's got on some special gear tonight. Why don't we go ahead and go with Building a Mystery by Sarah McLachlan, as that will lead us into our commercial break, and then it'll be time to assemble the round table.
Timberline Homes, Highway 78 East. Online at TimberlineJasperAL.com.
Collinsburg Funeral Home in Jasper has been serving the people of this area for many years. Professional, dignified services in your time of need. Call Collinsburg and ask about pre-arranged services. The number 384-5571. 384-5571. You can depend on the staff at Collinsburg Funeral Home when you really need them. Located on Oak Hill Road in Jasper.
The two words we live by. The coach we follow.
All right, blow the horn. Let's go.
The famous call we love to hear.
Touchdown, Alabama!
It's good to be a Bama fan. Join us Saturday as the Crimson Tide brave Death Valley to battle the LSU Tigers. Our coverage begins at 3 on your home for Alabama football. The Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Time to play the game. Time to play the game.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, the round table is assembled. Joining Bass and I, Coach Antoine Courington and Cool Hand Luke himself, Luke Keeton, where this week we're going to dissect all of last week's games, but most importantly, we're going to analyze the first round of the playoffs. Guys, breaking from the norm here because it's humongous news in state this week. We know that Brian Harrison was fired. Cadillac Williams is taken over. Now begins the quest to find the coach. To be perfectly honest with you, and I want you guys to chime in next, I think before Auburn finds themselves a new coach, there's something more importantly they need to get. They need to get patience. And the reason is this. Whoever takes this over, this is going to be a big rebuilding job. I know the transport portal helps out, but guys, the transport portal at most might get you 3 or 4 players. It goes back to the backbone of recruiting. Auburn in recruiting, their last 2 recruiting classes were 18th and 22nd. You've got to recruit offensive linemen for these stars that are coming in and also the positions on defense. Otherwise, these stars are just maybe at best might get you 6 wins. This is a very long process, and whoever comes in, they've got to have the time and the patience to do that. Even regardless if Brian Harrison was not a good fit, I think we all agree he was never given a chance, really. They were already starting in January after he'd had 1 season trying to oust him. So, Coach, you and Luke take it, and we'll end off with Sebastian, but what do you see happening in there, and potentially who do you see that they get?
Well, as far as what's happening now, I'm pretty much feeling like they're trying to get rid of everyone that's been there, everyone that's there now, and just start fresh from scratch whenever they do select a coach. And by naming Cadillac as the interim head coach, it gives him a chance. I mean, we know he's been there very long as a coach, also played there, had a great career, and they'll sometimes have guys that they can throw a bone to, and this is kind of what I think it is for him. Get you a head coaching chance, let people see you in that position, and then maybe you can land on your feet somewhere else. And definitely, if not in a head coaching role at a small school, maybe even could be another big name for a HBCU school in the future. I mean, he could possibly get on as a coordinator somewhere, start to learn and get that role in as well. So, I mean, chances are going up for him, but I mean, I do not expect it to be at Auburn after this year at all. So, clean slate as far as the name that they would go after next. I mean, we've seen some guys that they've thrown up there, Matt Rule, I mean, he's probably one of the leading candidates that I think about right now is him. I mean, everyone says Deion Sanders, and he should get a phone call, at least get an interview. And I'd even, as far as recruiting go, we know that's going to be the big thing that they need. And it's just hard to go against that. I mean, you got certain names. If this person walks into your home, it's gonna change how you look at things. And Nick Saban is one. I mean, you got some of the top coaches, Dabo Swinney, some of those other big name guys, and Deion Sanders is another one. I mean, he may be at Jackson State, but he's a guy that if he comes into your home, you're gonna listen to what he has to say, and I mean, it could be something that he could win you over. So I think just off of that alone, he should be a guy that gets a call, interview, and maybe even first offer. But we'll see how it goes from here. And I mean, I don't know. I'm not an Auburn fan. This is not an Auburn hat for people watching the live stream either. But I mean, it's just one of those. Hopefully, they can make the right move. Because I mean, SEC is always better when they're competitive, when they're right there battling Alabama. I mean, that last game of the year, you want that to be a good game, but I mean, it's also something where Auburn fans can be able to. I mean, it's fun when they talk trash. So, I mean, they're not really talking it this year, but hadn't been recently. But I mean, it's just one of those things you want to see them get right. So, I mean, it's just good for college football. Period.
Luke,
there's one thing that I'll say about coaching in the SEC, just from what I've seen in the past, and as you spoke about, and a lot of people say the only coach in the entirety of the entire in the world that could not be fired and would leave before he got fired is Nick Saban. He has the highest job security out of anybody. Especially in the SEC, there is so much pressure put on these coaches, and especially at a big school like Auburn, who has had success in the past, who has won a championship in the last 10, 12 years. So they're going to get the recruit. They're going to get recruits either way because of their being an SEC school. But the problem is you bring in a guy like Coach Harrison and somebody from outside the SEC, it's tough for these players to want to come to an SEC school to play for a Boise State coach. I think that was the whole point. I think a lot of people were saying that if you do bring on a guy like Deion Sanders, that you bring that big name, you bring those recruits over. Let's not forget, guys, Deion Sanders got the #1 recruit in this past class. The guy had a scholarship from Alabama, scholarship from every single big university in the entire United States, and he decided to go to Jackson State to play under Coach Sanders. So you got to, I agree with Coach here especially. He needs to get a phone call for sure. We've heard Lane Kiffin. I don't see that happening. I think Lane Kiffin is growing something with Ole Miss right now, and I think he's got a lot of good stuff going. They have kind of slipped off these last couple games, but other than that, they've had an incredible season so far. I don't see Lane Kiffin leaving one SEC school. I mean, he has in the past, though. He had the problem with Tennessee and going to USC, so we know he's not against it. But I don't see that happening. I think for Auburn is they need a coach that's going to come in and change some things. I mean, they don't need the same normalcy. They need some change, and I think that's what I've heard from a lot of Auburn fans. Once again, I'm a coach. I'm not an Auburn fan, so I cannot speak from an Auburn fan's mindset. But just from what I've heard from the majority of most Auburn fans, they want somebody different, somebody that's going to come in, change up the system, somebody that's going to get under the players, get them fired up, get them ready to play. We just hadn't seen that from the Auburn team this year and Coach Harrison. So I think it was time to go, and it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing unfolds.
Like Luke said, it's very, very hard to coach in the SEC, to be honest. Brian, you said that they were possibly looking at out in Harson back in January when some of that stuff happened. My main question is, if you've been possibly looking at it since January, why didn't you do this earlier? Why didn't you go ahead and do it? Why didn't you do it? Like Luke said, I don't think Lane Kiffin's going to be the fit for Auburn. But like you said earlier too, Brian, and we talked about it, Texas A&M is possibly looking at buying out Jimbo Fisher's contract. We know the talent Texas A&M has right now.
It's loaded.
That could be a possibility for Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
You had mentioned, I believe, what was it, Hugh Freeze? Comparing, like you said, Liberty money, Auburn money.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a possibility. I think the biggest possibility here for Auburn for what's going to happen is going to be Deion Sanders. Just looking at, him getting that number one, prospect pretty much, signee, recruit, I should say, for just the coach he is, that and what Luke said, Auburn fans really wanting to change, they're wanting to change there. I could kind of see that more of anything. But going off the subject here for a minute, definitely keep that Lane Kiffin situation in the back of your head, because that's going to be something interesting as well happen.
Well, the caveat, guys, you just mentioned it. There's a lot of disgruntlement now. It's shifted from Auburn eyes to Texas A&M eyes, because Texas A&M is sitting 3-5,
Mm-hmm.
and A&M's, if they lose to the garbage, I hope that they don't, but if they lose to the garbage, the best Texas A&M is going to do is 6-6 this year, and that includes trying to beat LSU. I don't see that the way that Texas A&M right now is going to do that. If they miss a bowl, Jimbo's going to be gone. But that begs the question, guys, how many top candidates out there are sitting back watching the Texas A&M fiasco and watching that, because they could go into a situation at Texas A&M where there's more resources. You don't have to leave the state to recruit a national championship, and there's already loads of talent from those recruiting classes that have been number 1 and I think number 3 versus Auburn that's been number 22 and number 18. The top candidates would more likely be Texas A&M. What do you think, guys?
Man, Bill O'Brien's name just popped in my head when you said Texas A&M. I don't know why. I guess affiliation with the Texans or something like that, but it's just one of those fits that I think would be perfect. And I mean, I'm not a fan of Bill O'Brien.
Me either.
But I mean, it's just one of those things where I know, just because of the success that Alabama's had, him being there for the past couple of years, him being another Saban, he's gonna be a hot name coming out. And it's one of those things where, I mean, a lot of people do not like his style, but he hasn't really done anything horrible, hadn't done anything wrong, or hadn't been an issue off the field or anything like that to discredit himself as a potential candidate for one of these positions. And just some team looking for a stable head coach, someone with some NFL clout. I mean, you think about Texas, the big money, the oil money guys, and all the money that they're going to shell out. They're going to want someone with a strong name, some credibility in the higher ranks, NFL, things like that. They're going to want all that, and he's going to be one of the guys that's going to be mentioned for it, I guarantee. But just them alone, their season hasn't been good. I know they had the injury to the quarterback early in the year and ended up having to go with a backup, and it didn't work out well. It still wasn't going well with the starter from game one. So, I mean, just started out horrible for Texas A&M. And, I mean, it's just one of those things where, I mean, I'm thinking like Jimbo got you this talent. I didn't think they would be very good just because I knew who the quarterbacks were. I seen Max Johnson play at LSU the years before. Had seen Haynes King a little bit before he got injured last year. And, I mean, they struggled with both. But, I mean, it's just one of those things where you got to have everything in place. I mean, we could be talking about Auburn differently if they had a stable quarterback. I mean, it's just one of those positions that you have to have in the SEC if you're gonna compete. And along with offensive line, those two positions are just key. And they don't have it this year. So, I mean, I didn't expect them to be very good. They had all the talent in the world around them. But it's just one of those things where it would be best to just wait, I think. And so, I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it. I think they should wait it out instead of just a knee-jerk reaction, because he is the guy that's gotten you these recruits. He's the guy that got you the good season before. And, I mean, it's just one of those things that's hard to run away from. I mean, it's not like they've been world beaters before. So, I mean, I understand you got the talent, but what really are you asking for? To be number one in the country right now, hard to do.
And there's so many talented teams in college football. Once again, that just adds on to the pressure you get when you coach in the SEC. Is SEC being normally considered, in my opinion, the strongest conference and the strongest conference play there is to have in the entire nation. Like when I look at teams like Ohio State and their conference play, and I look at teams like Alabama and Texas A&M and these other teams that's playing really tough SEC opponents every week, it just doesn't compare, in my opinion, because I think the SEC has the strongest teams in the nation. But Texas A&M, and I agree with Coach on this, I think they need to wait out this season. Jimbo has brought these guys in. Some of these players have come just to play under Jimbo Fisher. So what do you do with those recruits that don't want to play anymore because Jimbo Fisher's been canned? You know, you can't take a risk like that, and especially with how big of a recruiting class they've had these last couple of years. I don't see them making a knee-jerk response, just a really quick, jerky response. I don't see that. Jimbo Fisher's brought a lot of success to Texas A&M in the last number of years, but we see this year and through some other times he's also brought, similar to older Texas A&M coaches, had some really good moments, but at the end of the day, he's not producing the super talented teams like Alabama and like Ohio State and other teams I was talking about, even out of the SEC. So once again, you just look at how much pressure these guys are under. I mean, last year, think about it. Jimbo Fisher was the first coach to ever beat Nick Saban. And he was looked at upon as the greatest coach Texas A&M's ever have. This year, he's at best, if they beat Florida, 6-6, and everybody already wants him fired. If you can't, I just couldn't fathom being under that amount of pressure, Brian.
Yeah, I can't either there, Luke. It's just, it's definitely weird, this whole coaching situation, because you look at Auburn, and then like we said, now it's kind of like, somewhat of the tables are starting to turn towards Texas A&M, but also too, like Luke said, you talk about A&M beating Bama last season. Talk about Jimbo Fisher, being the coach to do it and this and that. It's just weird, that there is talks about possibly A&M buying out Jimbo's contract, because you go from, you had a pretty good, decent year last year, and all of a sudden now you're not having a good year, and all of a sudden, bam, it's like, what happened there? Why is all of a sudden now you're possibly talking about buying out of his contract? What's going on there? Just something don't seem right to me there.
Yeah, guys, this is going to be something that we should definitely all keep our eyes on as college football fans, because if Jimbo gets ousted, you would have to think some of these high-profile names are going to skip over the list at Auburn when they already have ready-made talent there at A&M. And except for maybe Texas, A&M can throw around probably more money than anybody. Now, I think if the Longhorn job comes open, then you're talking, well, they could throw out $90 million a year if they want to. But Texas can run a good race, so it's obviously something we all want to keep our eyes on, especially if Texas A&M dumps, then Auburn goes from being high up on the list of sought-after jobs to being pushed down a little bit. So.
The main thing for me for this Auburn, coaching position is, who do they really turn to if, they can't possibly reach out a deal to Deion Sanders or Lane Kiffin, who's supposedly getting, rumored about, or possibly a Hugh Freeze? Who do they reach out to? Who I guess you could say what would be the surprise Auburn pulls to get a coach?
Well,
what team do they really try to go pull off of?
Well, I think one thing that you have to look at, as far as Auburn, their success comes when they have one of these fancy offensive coaches, and I think that's what the fans want too. That excitement that's created on the offense with the creativity, the things like what Gus brought with Cam Newton, things like that. And Hugh Freeze, he's one that's well known for his offensive mind, so he would definitely be high up on the list. And just guys like that. I mean, you got several guys that used to play quarterback and things like that. I know Sonny Cumbie, he's out there, and he was at Texas Tech when they ran the air raid, one of the highest passing. I think he was up there like 1 or 2 far as all time as quarterback, far as passing stats, and I actually got to play with him in arena football and kind of know the mind that he has. And I mean, he's just one of those guys that would really innovate the offense and give you that creativity that you want. Just guys like that, I think that's kind of what they're going to be pushing toward if they can't get the big name like a Deion, like you said, like Deion, Hugh Freeze, those kind of leading candidate guys, if they can't get something like that.
Well, guys, let's flip the switch. Let's go over our last week's scores. And, of course, we had 2 days of it, so we'll do Thursdays first. Carbon Hill ends the season with a loss to Oak Grove 47-18. Cordova beats former region opponent Carver and ends the season at 5-5, 41-18. And the game that Coach and I called, and it's still very whacked out, Faultville beats Winston County 30-20. Friday's scores: Homewood beats Jasper 38-20. Meek wraps up their first ever perfect season, 10-0, beating Oakman 48-22. Lynn wraps up their season with a win over Hubbardsville 44-14. Dora takes care of St. Clair County 34-14. Addison blanks Shoals Christian 56-0. And Summoning Christian ends the year also 5-5, beating Berry 53-18. So as I get your guys' opinions on last week, obviously there's some that we pretty much forecasted is easy for us. And then there's a couple of shockers. So, Coach, we'll turn it over to you first. What was your thoughts on last week's scores?
Well, pretty much status quo for the whole way out. I mean, we didn't see too much of a slip up from anyone, but except for the game that we called.
Yeah.
And that was, like you said, I mean, it's still hard to fathom how that game went wrong for Winston County. I mean, they started out great and had the defense going, and I mean, just halfway through the third quarter, we just saw it just come apart completely. And I mean, just kind of left you with a lot of questions there, and especially going into a playoff game, you wanted to see everything be, I mean, have your best foot forward, kind of per se, in that last game of the year. So I mean, they started out great. We can kind of see what they can be, but I mean, it's just one of those things you want them to be able to close it out on that deal. But as far as the other games, I really think everything went status quo how we thought it would, and I mean, just nothing much to talk about as far as the other scores. Nothing really.
Well, you know, when it's the last week of the regular season, you got a lot of these guys, as me and Brian kind of talked about on Game Day Final. One thing that I think about as someone who just graduated just a couple of years ago and, you know, played my final game of baseball was some of these guys, they took their final snaps that they ever will have last Friday night. And some of these guys will be going on the playoffs. You know, we'll talk about it later. We look at people like Jasper, teams like Jasper, you know, playing a tough opponent where it could be the final game of the season if they don't get the job done. And this is one thing I have to think about is a lot of these guys, you know that this past Friday night, everybody on the field was trying the hardest they could, even teams like Meek, even, you know, they have their playoff spot, you know, they were number one, they had won the area, but they still come out there, and especially those seniors, and come out in front of the home crowd and wanted to get it done. You know, and then you have the other side of it where you unfortunately look at a team like Carbon Hill who didn't have a good season this year and didn't really end on a good way. But I just want to say congratulations to all the seniors out there that will be graduating, and a great job to everyone who played and to played their final snap Friday. I know how that feeling feels, and it sucks. So congratulations to all them guys, and we're looking forward to the playoffs this week.
Yeah, it really went the way we thought it would. Just the shocker, really, for me is that Faultville-Winston County game, and you know, you guys are calling it, and I was here running the board, but just listening to it, you know, the two onside kicks that, you know, Faultville got, that really turned it around. That was and you guys were there. Maybe you know, see it from your eyes, but what happened there on those two onside kicks that Winston County could not recover?
Well, the first one, actually, if Winston County hadn't touched it, I don't think it went more than 6 yards, did it, Coach?
It didn't at all.
And then the second one was just an out-and-out recovery by Falkville. And then I think psychologically, things kind of took over in Falkville's favor because the pass defense that we saw from Winston County through 3.5 quarters was gone. Coach, can I sum it up better than that? I mean, is that what you saw as well?
Right, and it was a lot of the pass defense being gone, but I mean, I think a lot of credit goes to the quarterback and receivers for Falkville. I mean, we saw in the first half he threw a couple of balls that were right there hitting them in the chest and they drop it. But second half rolls around, they started catching the ball, things like that. And once they got ahead, Winston County really doesn't have it's not their offensive game to come from behind, throw the ball around, 2-minute offense. That's not their thing. So where they started out with a nice formula, get ahead, run the ball, feed your guys, run the clock out, play good defense. That strategy was working well, but once they started with the flubs on special teams and got behind, just couldn't execute that plan anymore. And I mean, it was just night and day as far as the execution. I mean, they couldn't even get it going on offense anymore after that. So I mean, it was tough to watch for them because I mean, you know, the times that Falkville got the onside kicks, the offense was doing okay. They didn't even get to come on the field then, and it was just up to the defense, and Falkville was steady just putting up those points, and it was, I mean, just nothing they could really do against that. And once they got the ball back, it was, we got to score quick, and that's not their MO.
Yeah, too little, too late there for them. Just hate to see that for Winston County, though, because it seemed like everything was going their way until that happened. So
yeah.
And you really wanted to win to go into the postseason. You really wanted, especially with playing a team like Falkville, you wanted to go into the playoffs with that final win, with that record looking a little bit better, because they've lost a couple as the season gone along. So that loss definitely does hurt, but I think Winston County's got to put that game to the side, and they've got to show up this week and forget about that last week. That's all they can do.
Well, guys, that is going to wrap up the regular season. 2022 regular season is now in the books. We have 7 teams remaining. And so when we come back from our music and commercial break, we are going to break down the 7 first-round playoff matches starting with Class 5A right after Adia from Sarah McLaughlin and our commercial break.
Adia.
Work. Listen to Alabama football all season long right here. Now, more of the B&B Show on WJLX.
Back here on the B&B Show, the B&B Round Table has already been assembled, and we are now going to go over, Brian, what is the 7 Wallwin area teams who have made the postseason, the playoffs for Alabama high school football.
That is correct, Bass. And before we start this up, some of these we're going to have a little bit of information on because they've played similar opponents or there's a little bit of a background. But in the case of a team like, let's say, Cleveland that's playing Winston County, there's not a whole lot out there. So we're just having to do our own basic analysis. So everybody out there in Radio Land and listen, I know this is going to be different from what you normally would hear from when we do our analysis. But in some of these cases, there's just not a whole lot of comparisons when they're playing in regions that, quite frankly, nobody has played in our area against before. So that's what happens typically in the playoffs. But let's start this out. Class 5A, Jasper, who is 5-5, at number 6, Moody, who is 9-1. Now, guys, Moody's only loss on the year was to the region champion, Leeds, and number 2 team in the state. That loss was 14-13. So a 2-point conversion by Moody, they would be region champions. They would be undefeated right now. And instead, Jasper would be playing Leeds. That's how close these two teams are. So basically, Jasper is just a 2-point conversion away from playing a team that could be number 2 in the state. Guys, I could honestly see the outcome being a lot like last week's. I could see this being a 38-20 victory for Moody. I think that Jasper will put up points, but I don't see them getting through this one. Luke?
Well, and this is the thing about Jasper this year is we've seen a lot of improvement as the season's going on. We saw them start off with the 3 losses in a row, but then we saw the 5 wins in a row at the end of the season. And then, to lose the 2 in a row going into the playoffs now, and that's always unfortunate to come off of 2 losses going into the playoffs. But I think this year, the way that they started, I think in a way this is a win in itself for Jasper. They made the playoffs. They are playing against a very high-level opponent. Do I think they're going to beat Moody? I'm going to agree with you, Brian. I don't think it's going to happen. It would definitely take a lot of it's going to take some trickery, some mistakes on Moody's side to really turn this game over. But, I could see Jasper maybe coming in and putting more of a fight if they had, instead of 2 losses to end the year, maybe if they had 2 big wins to end the regular season and come in with a little more confidence. But coming off of 2 losses, pretty tough losses toward the end of the year, I just can't see it for Jasper, unfortunately. I love my Vikes to death, but unfortunately this year, I think this is as far as they go.
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling the same about the first round exit here. So, it's just one of those things where you want to see them have their best play going in this game. And, I think the best thing that they could do is just have their offense going to where they can just put up as many points as possible. And, that's the I don't want to say only hope, but that's the big hope there. And you got to be able to make plays on special teams also. We saw last week how big that is. And in a game like this, playoff game, everything on the line, you'd expect all coaches to just be ready to throw things out there. So maybe Coach Bailey has some tricks up his sleeve. Maybe he has some onside kicks, anything, special punt blocks, something that would be able to keep him in the ball game. So, just trying to be optimistic about it and just trying to throw out things that could keep him into the game. And it's going to be tough going against a team like Moody that, like you were saying, they're very equal to the number 2 team in the state. So it's going to be one of those things where you don't expect them to win, Jasper to win, but they're just going to need things to go right on Friday night. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm with you guys. I don't expect a W in this one, but just trying to throw out some things that'll help them.
Yeah, you might as well pretty much label Moody as, like Coach said, they're right at, being with the number 2 team. Might as well label them number 2 as well. Moody's a really good team. They're always usually a pretty good team when it comes down to the playoffs. They show a lot of momentum in the playoffs for sure. That's for sure. But like Coach said, I kind of agree. I think Coach Bailey's going to have a good bit of tricks up his sleeves in order to really get by this one. And even that, I don't even think it's going to be really enough to get by Moody, because it. Looking at Moody, they finished what was second, right, in the region. That's good for Moody there, but it's like once Moody kind of that first and second round for Moody, they always play really good ball there when it comes down to the postseason. So I think it's going to stay the same. I think Moody's going to keep the momentum that they do every single season. In the postseason, and I hate it for Jasper, but I don't think they'll make it out of this one.
All righty, guys, that's unanimous on that one. Now, the game that Coach and I will be at, our Walwyn area game of the week. Good Hope, who's 5-5, travels to Horace Roberts Stadium, where they will take on 7-3 Dora. Now, we do know something about Good Hope, not only the fact that they were a region opponent last year for Dora. Dora has seen them. Good Hope lost to Addison 30-28 in overtime. I think that was back on September the 23rd, right around in there.
Mm-hmm.
So we do know that as good as Addison is, Addison's a 1A, and that's a 4A that they beat in overtime when the numbers should have favored Good Hope. Now Good Hope's facing a team that has similar numbers to them that has drastically improved. Coach, you're going to be on the broadcast with me. You go ahead and take it.
This is a game that I expect Dora to win, and it's going to be, I don't want to say a statement win, but it's going to be one of those that they can have a lot invested into. Is more than just playoffs. I mean, they lost to them last year, so it's kind of a sour taste, and it should be a sour taste in their mouth, preparing for them this week. So just a little bit more fuel to add on to that fire with that. So I expect Dora to come out, play very well, and we all know how they've set the tone on defense so far this year. I expect them to continue that, and just the way the offense has come along this year, especially in the second half of the season, has been remarkable, and I expect them to play well on that end as well, because, I mean, it's been tough for teams to stop Sean Pryor once he's got going here, especially in the second half, like we were saying. I mean, it's just been game after game. He's come up with multiple touchdown efforts, and, I mean, they already have a lot for any defense to prepare for on that offense with Goodman at running back, and, I mean, just the weapons on the outside that you got 3 really good receivers, got a good tight end, you got even a good backup running back, and I mean, it's just a lot to prepare for any team. So I mean, I don't expect Good Hope to be able to do anything with them this week. I mean, it's kind of like, you don't want to say it, but I mean, you kind of putting Good Hope on a 1A level by them losing to Addison. So, I mean, you expect Dora to be able to handle that. So they play some really good ball here lately, and, I mean, we've seen what Good Hope's been up against this year. So going with the Dogs on this one.
Before we break over to Luke, just a quick one. Good Hope won the game 15-14 last year. That close. Go ahead, Luke.
This is what I looked at when I was starting to take a look at some of these games the other night. I kind of was sitting on the couch. I noticed this. Dora's, of course, we know they've only lost 3 games all year. So overall, that is incredible in its own to finish off the 7-3 schedule. They've won 5 games in a row to end the regular season, not versus the greatest quality opponents, but still to only allow the amount of points they did to each team is pretty dominant. As Coach said, their defense has looked incredible all year. They've only lost at home 1 time this year, and that was the season opener. And as we all talk about, there is so much improvement that comes on in the season, especially from Dora. We have seen Dora become a totally different team than that first game of the year, and as against a Winfield team who probably now toward the end of the year they would have a lot better chance. Probably would have beat toward the end of the year. So I don't see there being a way that Dora being at home versus Good Hope, first round of the playoffs, you've got the whole community there at Dora. I don't see Dora taking this loss to Good Hope. One loss on the season at home. I don't see it becoming two. I'm rolling with the Bulldogs on this one.
If this was a Good Hope team that we know over the last couple of years, I'd say this would be a different ball game.
Mm-hmm.
But the level of commitment this team's put in, talking about the Dora team here, that how hard the offense has worked, how hard the defense has worked, and talking about Coach Chavis Williams, who we talked about earlier on their preview show. He's a defensive guy. He's been working that defensive line hard and stuff like that. These two, this offensive line, defensive line, and these players, have been through a lot this season when it comes to those practices and stuff like that. Coach Chavis Williams knows what he's doing, especially on defense, but he's been working that O-line too. This is definitely a very, very, very improved team, and the record shows. They're region champions. So I'm looking at Dora here. Dora's going to win this ball game. But if this was Good Hope of past couple years we know is Good Hope, I say this would be a different ball game. And, we know Good Hope only won by 1 point last season. But it's just weird seeing Good Hope off of kind of going downhill, this season like that. So I'm going to go roll with the Bulldogs here.
Yep, I'm going to make it unanimous too. I think if Dora were to face Winfield right now, I think it'd be a 2-touchdown victory by Dora. I think they've improved that much. We've seen them evolve. We've seen the weapons that come out. We've seen the defensive cohesiveness. Right now, I think Dora is at its strength right now, and I think they're going to be a tough draw for anybody in the second round, because I think that they'll easily make it through the first round. No problem whatsoever. Two tidbits before we go about Dora, before we go into the music break. Bass and I went down and did a preview special with the Dora Bulldogs today. That will air right around lunchtime tomorrow on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. Also, tomorrow night in Coach's Corner, Chavis Williams will be with us at the Pie Factory with two of his players, so be sure to turn into that. In the meantime, Bass, let's go to Sweet Surrender by Scarra McLaughlin, and we'll be back with Class 3A.
On the B&B Show with the B&B Round Table once again, making its, what, Brian, third debut of this season so far, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We've done three.
Third one, and it is the playoffs we're talking about here. Brian, I believe, we head down to 3A action now?
Yep. We are in Class 3A. The Oakman Wildcats, 3-7, face number 3 Piedmont, 8-2. Now, guys, Piedmont's 2 losses this season are to the Class 4A number 10 team, Cherokee County, 21-14, and to the Class 4A number 2 Anniston, 30-28. Guys, I was at this meeting, and I'm going to go back a little bit because this is what Piedmont has been for so long. I was at the 2015 second round meeting between Oakman and Piedmont. Oakman back then was a very experienced older team versus this year's team that's very, very, very young. They lost that game 64-22. This year's Piedmont team looks like this. And just to give you all a little background, since 2007, Piedmont has only had one non-10 win season. Okay? Since that time, they've won 5 state titles, and they have been to the third round, at least the third round, all but 2 years since 2007. This is what Oakman has to face off with. And we know the gauntlet that Oakman has had to face the previous 3 weeks. Gordo, Winfield, Meek, and now Piedmont. Coach, it's all yours.
Well, good luck, Oakman. You're going to need it. But, I mean, we all know about Piedmont. I mean, they have been, might as well call them Piedmont University. Mm-hmm. The way they're there every single year, it just seems like they reload. And, I mean, they just a well-oiled, I mean, that's what you call a football machine, just wherever they're located. And, I mean, it's Piedmont. Mm-hmm. If you think about that on the map, and, I mean, they just got it going for football over there, whatever they're doing is working. So, I mean, it's just one of those things. We know Oakman's going to struggle with them, and, I mean, it's just a tough draw altogether for them, the way they've had to close out the season. But, I mean, it'll be one of those things you can take with you and be able to measure yourself, see where you are now, where you need to get to. And, I mean, that's basically all you'll be able to look at as far as this game, because, I mean, it's from outside looking in, there's no way they win this game at all. So, I mean, it's just kind of one of those things. You want to make it as competitive as possible and try to get you guys to play the best against this kind of competition and see where they stack up. So that's what I'll be looking for Oakman. Not necessarily looking for a win, but just trying to see who the competitors are that'll show up in big games for them. So that's what I'll be looking for as far as this game with Oakman.
Well, Brian, we can say it again for the 4th week in a row. It doesn't get any easier for Oakman. We've said it every week for the last 4 weeks, and we get to say it again, unfortunately. The Wildcats come into this game off of 5 straight losses, all to very high, ranked opponents. Gordo, Winfield, Meek, Fayette County, and Winterboro, their last 5 losses. Now, the Winterboro loss shouldn't have happened. I think if you kept up with that game at all, you knew that game was just an unfortunate loss for Oakman. But the next 4 of those were nothing much that they could do there. I mean, you look at an Oakman team that's kind of limping into the playoffs here on 3-7 record, and it's unfortunate what they're going to have to play. I agree. I like what Coach said. Piedmont University. I mean, they're basically playing all but a Division 2 or 3 college team here. It's from what they seem like from the past years. Not much Oakman's going to be able to do. Of course, I'm going to go Piedmont, of course, but just an unfortunate turn of events for the last 4 weeks for the Wildcats.
Unfortunately, the Bulldog is going to get the Wildcat. It's not going to get any easier, like Luke said, and like we've been saying for the 4th straight week now. This is still a very young Oakman team. We know that, and it's a very, very tough draw for Oakman in the first round because it's not going to be easy for them to see. It's not. I hate for any Oakman fans to come out of that game, to be honest, because that's tough draw. Tough draw.
Yeah, guys. Obviously, here this is for me. This isn't a no-brainer for Piedmont. The only thing that I can really say is let's hope in 3 seasons from now. We've had a preview special out at Oakman, and there's some freshmen who will be seniors then who will say, I remember that year where we had to go up to Piedmont. We were 3-7 on the season, and that just galvanized us as a team that we didn't want to ever do that again. So let's hope we're talking to that 3 seasons from now. So hopefully this will leave the mark. Class 2A, Winston County, who's 6-4, at Cleveland, who's 7-3. Now, Cleveland's only loss in Class 2A was to Southeastern. We know, unfortunately, how Winston County lost last week. We've seen the high marks for Winston County where they just barely lost on the last play of the game to Aliceville. That tremendous victory against Lamar County. And we've obviously seen low points like last week. Coach, you have it from here.
This is kind of a lot like after the loss to Aliceville, I'll be asking the same question again this week. Does that loss last week kill the morale of the players going into this week, or do they get it turned around and be able to put it together? I think this is a game where they're underdog and should be on paper, but it's a winnable game at the same time. They just have to be able to stick to their script, and what that is get ahead, play defense, run the clock out, use your big guys. I mean, keep everything just ground and pound from there, and be able to use Declan Morgan and be able to use the big guys at running back. And even I think if they use Chris Clemens, it's more so in the open field trying to get big plays out of him, but it should be a few more spots where they should be able to try to work him in, give him the ball. If it's put him in the slot, let him work against a linebacker, something running a route, or just be able, because the speed that he showed us on last Thursday night was something incredible, especially on that level. And I mean, just something that you think they should be able to use more. So they got the tools, got the weapons where they could get things done, but it's just a matter of, are they able to put it all together and execute, be able to jump out, get that lead, and stick to their script, play their style of play where they're ahead, and being able to play defense and just keep away at the end of the game. And if they can do that, they can win this ball game. Don't know much about Cleveland to be able to comment on them, but I mean, just being able to say that about Winston County, if they can put those things together, I think they got a good shot.
Realistically, this year, when we look at Winston County's schedule and the losses they've had, really only one loss all year has really come out to me as like they really just lost that game. There was no, there was nothing they could do about it, and that was the game to Tuscaloosa Academy, who we know is an incredible program. But you look at the Aliceville game, they lose on the last play of the game. They were in it the entire game. If the defense just holds one more play, you have the win. We look at last week, they had the lead that game, and then the 2 onside kicks and everything that happened, as we spoke about earlier, and they end up losing that game. We look at the Silligit game, who was only a 4-point loss. I don't really remember the details of that game, but a 4-point loss, it was a close game the entire way, even though it was low scoring. So you really look at this Winston County team, and really the only true loss that they've had this year was to Tuscaloosa Academy. So you've seen a lot of ups and downs from this team. We've seen a lot of improvement at times, but then we've also seen times like the other night where the mental side of the players, sometimes they just seem to not know what's going on, like on the onside kicks and stuff. When you're in charge of a game the way they were at that time, you can't allow that stuff to happen. You've got to be mentally strong. You've got to go out there, recover the kick. You've got to realize when the ball's not gone 10 yards. You got to play smart. And we've seen Winston County play smart throughout the year. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just simply stating it seems like sometimes this year when it seemed like it's mattered most, sometimes Winston County and throughout the year they've been the one to make the mistake in the end of the game. And they cannot do that this week. Once again, I'm with Coach. I'm not sure much about Cleveland as they're not, in our nowhere near our area or anything. But it seems like Cleveland has a respectable team this year. They've made it to the playoffs for a reason. So they're a playoff level team. So it's not going to be easy. Winston County's coming into this game as the underdog, as Coach said. And if they want to win this game, they've got to limit the mistakes. And they've got to play their brand of football if they want to win this game. Really, the game that I really saw that was the Lamar County game. Put up 46 points. They looked good throughout, and they got to play that level of football against this Cleveland team.
Bass?
Looking at Winston County, they've definitely had their, I guess you could say, their ups and downs on the seasons, depending on what team they've played. Just looking, if Winston County would have took care of business last week, I would have been saying I say Winston County wins by possibly a touchdown or maybe 10 points. But something happened last week with Winston County, and just like Coach said, the psychological mindset of, I guess, how Faultville was able to get in the mindset of Winston County. I don't know. That really, helped Faultville take advantage of the game. Winston County had it rolling, and all of a sudden it's like a light flip just switched. I don't know what happened. I'd really like to say Winston County in this ball game. I really would, but Winston County has really got to clean up the mistakes, like Luke said, and really has to, play their style of ball. They need to take care of business. We've seen them do that, in some games this season. If they can play the games that they've took care of business against Cleveland, then they can pull this off. But looking at it, just looking at some of the, like the Aliceville game and now the Faultville game, that they've just kind of let it slip by them. That I'm not sure how they can really fix that. I do, but that's. They let the last play drive, from Aliceville, get Aliceville the win, and then all of a sudden, what happened against Faultville? Why did you pretty much shut down? If Winston County would have won this game, I would be saying Winston County by at least a touchdown or so. But I don't see it happen. I think Cleveland will take this one.
I'm going to go Cleveland, guys, and the reason is there's the psychological component that we talked to about after the Aliceville game, going into Lamar County. We wondered about their psychological component on that. There's one thing in the psychological component that helped them out. They were at home against Lamar County. After the breakdown last week, if they were at home, I'd feel a little bit better, but they're on the road. They have to go on the road after the wheels came off the bus. They've had a lot of heartbreaks this season, and I just feel that they are not going to be mentally prepared for it. So I'm going to go Cleveland. I think Winston County will keep it close, but I think Cleveland will get on top of them, and they'll have to come from behind. And, Coach, we saw it last week. They're just not a come-from-behind team. Just don't think they got the horses for it. So, Bass, before we go down to Class 1A, let's go ahead and go with Angel by Sarah McLaughlin, and then we'll be down with our 3-1A contests that remain here on the B&B Show.
Home for great vehicles, great prices, and great people. Experience doing business the way it should be done. Look, like, and buy today at Robinson & Son Automotive Group. Don't dream it, drive it. Robinson & Son Automotive Group, Viking Drive in Jasper.
The two words we live by. The coach we follow. All
right, blow the horn. Let's go.
The famous call we love to hear.
Touchdown, Alabama!
It's good to be a Bama fan. Join us Saturday as the Crimson Tide brave Death Valley to battle the LSU Tigers. Our coverage begins at 3 on your home for Alabama football. The Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
That's right. You can hear all your Alabama Crimson Tide football action all season long right here on WJLX as the Crimson Tide head to Baton Rouge this Saturday to take on the LSU Tigers. 3 o'clock pregame on the air here at WJLX. 6 o'clock kickoff. You can hear all the action right here at WJLX. Brian, going down to 1A action here for the playoffs.
That's right, Bass. And let's start it off with the game at Meek. Cedar Bluff, 4-6. At number 7, Meek, they got moved up, but still, number 7. Thanks, ASWA. Meek, 10-0. Meek finished its first perfect season last week with the win over Oakman. Yeah, I know. It's just they could screw up a junkyard. Now, guys, Cedar Bluff, as we know, we've talked about this before, they were one of 3 teams that were 2-4 in their region. Okay, so through some kind of selection, I still don't get it. Unless they just went eeny, meeny, miny, mo. But let's just call it what it is. They're Meek's first-round victim. Coach, you go right on ahead.
They definitely are the victim this weekend. Big thing to look at with Meek this week is to see any kind of offensive change-ups. Because, I mean, we've known from game 1, they can run the ball, they can line up, put Cam Deaver, they can put Ori Frith, they can give it to Blake Miller. That's the easy part. But can you switch up the offense and complete a play-action pass? Can you run hitch routes and throw the ball to the outside towards the sideline? Can you get some things done differently from what you've done before? You haven't had any need to so far. And that's a blessing, but also kind of a curse in itself. And, I mean, they work on things in practice, so they know what more than we do. If they can pass the ball or how they feel about it. So, I mean, they have a better understanding of that than we do. But, I mean, it's one of those things you want to see put into game action. I mean, they switched up and put Cam Deaver at quarterback this past week. He threw some passes, completed some passes. So, I mean, that's definitely a positive for them. I mean, I kind of want to see if they build on that this week. So that's what I'll be looking for. Not that anything will be a challenge this week in the ball game. It could end up being 100-0. But I don't know if they're still going to use the hot clock in the playoffs or not. It could very well be one of those situations. If they do, it could be halftime and the clock's running at 2 minutes. So it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. But that's what I want to see from Meek is any kind of offensive switch ups if they're going to do anything passing the ball wise. And I mean, just to be looking more like a complete team going into the next round and seeing the competition start to ramp up a little bit. You want to be able to do a little bit more with your team. So that's what I'll be looking at. Definitely going to know that they're going to win, but just want to see the offensive improvement.
Another thing that I thought was really cool when I was taking a look at some of these games is, and of course, before I get into it, I think we all know, as Coach just said, I mean, this is going to be a monumental – it would take something of monumental proportions for Meek to even come close to losing this game, and that's just coming close to losing it. Cedar Bluff, unfortunately, just given the bad hand, kind of as Oatman did, but this is even worse. Number 7, undefeated Meek. But Cedar Bluff, I 100% got Meek in this game, but one thing that I was noticing was last week, the last time we had the round table, I remember I spoke about how Meek could have, if Meek puts a bunch of points, they could have over 400 points in the season. Not only did they beat that mark, they put up 450 points this season.
Wow.
Which is that's averaging 45 points a game. But this is the thing for me. They have allowed 115 points in 10 regular season games. That's barely over. That's 10, 11 points per game, and then scoring 45 points a game. That was insane to me. Just think about. In these last couple of weeks, of course, they've tore up on some kind of smaller teams. So the question is Meek is not, this is the thing for me, is we all know that Meek is ready this year, but for some of these players, this will be the first time they've ever been on a playoff stage before. So will these players be able to handle it this week and going into the next weeks and further on the playoffs? Will some of these younger players that are playing be able to handle the pressure of that 10-0 after this week? Most likely, we're looking at an 11-0. We're looking at a 12-0 possibly. So, you've got to keep your emotions aside, and you just got to keep playing ball. That's what it's about. And I'm very impressed with Meek this year. They've impressed me more than any other team in our area, in my opinion.
If you don't think them boys over there at Meek can handle the pressure, there's something wrong with you. They've been through it all this season. They've been through the Addison game, which packed out on both sides of the field. They've been through it all. They can handle it. But nonetheless, like Luke said, though, 450 points. That's crazy. They scored over 400 in the regular season, I should say. And they're going to keep the momentum going. They're not going to stop until they either reach the fourth round or they make it to the state championship. The momentum's not going to stop for me. We've talked about it time and time again. They don't have guys who play both sides of the ball, all the time. Just the momentum for me that they have this year is insane. Still think the Sports Writer Association's down in Meek here. They should be way up there. Looking at some of the teams that they've put up over Meek is
fire all of them.
It's insane, to be honest, but it is what it is. But what's curious for me and what's really interesting, if cards match up, everything plays out, Meek could possibly be facing who they faced in the spring game in the second round, Pickens County. Gonna be interesting.
Very much so. Guys, I think that Cedar Bluff is going to be sent back home with a handprint on their posterior. So we're going to take our last music break and take a look at our last two 1A teams after this. Well, let's go ahead and move to our other region champion in Class 1A. Donahoe at 4-5 travels to Lynn to play the number 10 Bears, who are 9-1. Guys, we know how good Lynn has been this year.
Mm-hmm.
But we just talked about Cedar Bluff a minute ago. Check this out. Cedar Bluff beat Donahoe last week 34-0. And Donahoe is going to play Lynn. Coach, the floor is yours.
I think we'll get a healthy dose of Kel Tittle to start out the game, and I think it'll be quick work for Lynn in this one. Don't expect them to have any problems. Like you said, Donahoe, they struggle with Cedar Bluff, so they shouldn't have too much to put up for Lynn. It only gets, like you guys said about Oakman, it only gets worse. So this is their step up, and Lynn is going to be one of those teams that you look to see if they can just maintain what they got going, because they have been hot. They have been hot ever since they took the only loss they got, and it's not even a 1A loss, so it's one of those things where they're going to cruise in this one. And just saying that just now, I hadn't really thought about it before until I just said it, but we've talked about Meek being disrespected in the rankings. I think Lynn may be also. I really look at them as one of the more complete teams in 1A, just with what all they're able to do offensively, and their line plays very well, and the defense plays well. They're very opportunistic. They create turnovers, things like that, and it's just one of those things where expecting them to go pretty far in the playoffs here. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tougher for them in their half than it is for Meek to get through there with the teams that's in there, the 8 teams that's in there with Lynn and Addison and all in them. But I think they could make a lot of noise in that half of the North bracket. So just as complete as they are, it's going to be tough for anybody that draws them. So it's going to be one of those things you want to see them maintain what they've been doing and just be able to build off of that. So that's what I'll be watching for. Definitely going to pick them to win and win big in this one. So no problem on that end. So just want to see the other things.
Well, Coach said about all there had to be said about the game. One thing that I have to say is, especially, and I kind of just thought about this too during the break, was one good thing about Meek and Lynn both having these kind of lower quality opponents to start off is, one, that's giving you confidence to start the playoffs. You know that you're coming in, you're being pretty much coming into the game as a heavy favorite, and you're not really having to worry about really game plan. Of course, there's still game planning for this game. Don't get me wrong on that, but you really, you have the stress off of you playing a big team to start off. You know that you kind of start off, you kind of easing into the playoffs instead of going in tough, kind of like how Jasper and some other teams are doing here in our area, really starting off against quality opponents that, it's do or die. And that's the big part of it. But one thing that I was thinking about was during these games, we've been talking about how they're going to be. This is not going to be a slugfest by any man. This is going to be Lynn and Meek taking it to their opponents. And a lot of these young guys are going to get to play this week. And that, to me, that's a lot. Because what if you have injuries down the line toward the end of the playoffs? You've got to have your younger guys still showing up. So these two games, you're going to get to see Lynn's young guys get to come out and have some experience on a playoff field. You're going to have Meek and both of them coming out in front of the home crowd. So, you got to think it's going to be packed out. And so, Lynn is easily going to take this game at home. And other than Meek, in my opinion, they are the most impressive team in our area for sure.
They are the most impressive team so far, along with Meek. But like we've said so far, Lynn shouldn't have a problem with this. With this team, it's Lynn's been playing pretty impressive ball this season. They're going to continue on through the playoffs. They're definitely an improved team, impressive team. Just not really much to say when it comes to against a Donahoe team who lost to Cedar Bluff. So But the question might, and I'll ask the question in a second, but I mean, Lynn should take care of business.
I hope my family over in Anniston and Gadsden doesn't get on me too bad for saying this, but I think Lynn's going to swat Donahoe, who are Donahoe graduates. But I think Lynn's going to swat them easily and move on to the second round. So, consensus there. Last matchup: Appalachian 5-5 at Addison 8-2. There's not a whole lot of information out there on Appalachian that really jumps out at me, and we know how good Addison has been playing outside of the loss to Meek. I mean, it's just been no problem, cut and dry. Appalachian forfeited last week against Southeastern. Comes at a really weird time. The week before you start the playoffs, you forfeit. Wouldn't you want to test your team against the top team in the region? Weird. Outside of that, there's not really anything that jumps out at Appalachian. They're, like I said, they're a middle-of-the-road team. Coach?
Yeah, I mean, their record's 5-5. They're very middle of the road. I don't expect Addison to have much of a problem and kind of just try to break them down. They're also one of those complete teams. We saw what they were able to do against Meek, even though it wasn't – they didn't stop Meek at all on defense, but offensively they kind of shifted gears and became a quick striking team. And we had seen before in the previous game, I think it was Waterloo, when we watched them before that, they were kind of more hitting everything on the ground and things like that. So, I mean, it kind of shows some balance there on their offensive end. So that's kind of what you're going to be looking for Addison, to see if they can build off of that. And just their offensive capabilities with being able to do a lot of things, plus having a dynamic quarterback that can do a lot of things, it's going to help them out a lot. So I expect them to win big. I expect them to be able to get their guys out soon. And that's just kind of, you just want to, I guess all of our 1A teams here, you just kind of want to keep everything sharp, fine-tune everything in this first round, and then look to stay healthy and then get to the second round, because that's when the competition's going to ramp up a little bit, especially for Lynn and Addison. They could be facing each other. So, I mean, it's going to be one of these things where first round you kind of get to see where you are, focus on yourself, make sure you're doing the right things, kind of get everything going into the gear that you want. You want it full gear. So that's where you are with the 1A teams in Winston County. You just want everything looking good this week, because the competition is not there, but next week is when it really jumps up a little bit. So, I mean, that's what I'll be looking for with it.
Well, I thought it was interesting you said that they forfeited last week. That kind of jumped out to me, and I kind of was kind of like you, a little bit confused on that, as we don't know much about Appalachian. But, Coach, I had a question for you in regards to that. Do you think that had anything to do with, like, they were coming in the game knowing that they were most likely not going to get that win against Southeastern? Do you think maybe the coach thought less of a chance for injury, wanted to come in full health with, I guess, in their way, a bye week by not playing in the game against Southeastern? Do you have any idea what that may be about? Or, I mean, we're not here to speculate, but I just want to know, from a coaching standpoint, what that may mean.
Well, I mean, like the one part you said, as far as injuries, that could probably have the biggest chunk to do with it. If you got guys that you know you have to be able to compete. I mean, Southeastern, they're one of the better teams there. So if you're looking to have a chance to compete, you really want to have your guys there. And, I mean, that could be the only thing I could think of. But at the same time, if you know you're not going to win that game and you have a backup there, you want to get them that action. So, I mean, it's kind of a two-sided deal. Maybe they don't have a backup at a position where they're missing a key guy. But, I mean, other than that, you do want to compete. This is a competitive sport, so you don't want to – if you got a coach cowering away from because you're playing a good team, then that's definitely not going to sit well with anyone there, the fans, the players, anything. Because, I mean, you can try to sugarcoat that any kind of way you want to. But if there's no reason to play and a coach forfeits, then at some point it's gonna register to everyone that he just cowered down, and I mean that's not gonna bode well for anyone. Mm-hmm. So I'd expect it to be something to do with injuries or something else. It's a definite reason to pull out of a game like that. Because other than that, the first thing you want to do playing football or coaching football is you want to compete. And that means just getting out there. Forget your chances of winning and losing. You want to get out there, compete, see where you are, your guys are, measure your team, because you can always take that route if you can't do anything else.
Well, I'm not a coach, but I agree with you on that. I 100% agree with you. This is a competitive sport, and I think if you have a chance to play, you need to put your best foot forward and at least give it an effort. That's just how I look at it from a fan and I guess as a official WJLX analyst for these games, along with Brian and all of you guys. We want to see action. You want to see your students and your student athletes play. And I just feel like, Coach, I know you're the type of guy you wouldn't make that kind of decision as a coach. But back to the game, Addison has looked incredible all year. 2 losses on the season, and you could, one of them being to Meek, who is the undefeated team, and the other one coming at the beginning of the year when they were still trying to find their footing. Addison's going to roll. We're going to get to see, once again, some of the younger guys play. Once again, we don't know a lot about Appalachian. We don't know if they might be, now that if they are rested up from last week, what they might be bringing this coming week, and it'll be interesting to see them play and get to see them how they play for the first time. So, but I no doubt got the Bulldogs here. They have looked very impressive this year, and I don't see it stopping this week.
Vance?
Yeah, the Bulldogs are going to roll in this one as well. They've just, like Luke said, and Coach said, they've looked impressive all year, and they keep playing to their style of ball. They keep taking care of business there, so I think they'll keep taking care of business. And we don't know a lot about this Appalachian team, so we really don't know. And why they decided to forfeit last week is left us all clueless. But it is what it is. We have no idea. So just definitely interested in why they forfeited that game last week. But it is weird though that they did against a top Southeastern team. And maybe Coach is right, or Luke. Maybe injuries could be a thing. You didn't want to injure some guys, and for this next game, I don't know. But Addison, they've looked strong. They're going to take care of business. And boy, what kind of matchup it'd be for Addison and Lynn second round.
I'm waiting for it. I hate that Coach won't be with us for it, but I'm waiting for it. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and take Addison. I think they're just looking too powerful right now. I just don't think Appalachian is the type of opponent that's going to be able to stop them. So I think that we'll pretty much wrap it up. But I do have something a little special for you.
Here we go.
Are you ready for it? Brilliant. Broke the 500-yard plane. It was in points surrendered. They ended the year having given up 502 points for the season. Are they the worst team in team defense? No! We have Class 4A Talladega, who gave up 586 points on the year.
Wow.
So Brilliant came in 3. However, for Talladega, they at least scored 141 points in the year, where Brilliant only scored 38. So does that make them the worst scoring team in the state? No! And down in the southeast corner, there's a team, JF Shields, that only scored 24 this year.
Oh, no.
So Brilliant finishes with the number 2 in scoring defense, the bottom. And the number 3 scoring defense at the bottom, Mae Jemison, actually gave up 532. But they do finish in second place for the worst scoring offense with 38 points.
Wow.
Just remember, folks, no matter what teams that you currently root for this year, at least you're not Brilliant. Bass? That's about that time. Remember, there is no B&B next week. We will be broadcasting the Bevill State versus Stillman JV game. But Grass, let's grab that sign. Let's flip it from open to close because it's closing time.
It's closing time on the B&B Show. Until 2 weeks from today, we will see you back on the airwaves. Until then, We are signing off right here on the B&B Show.
Closing time.